Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, retirement. But most importantly and most uniquely, I'm going to talk about the things nobody ever tells you and nobody ever talks about. And it's those things that can take your retirement celebration and throw you right into the pit of retirement hell. And I've been there. I've done that. I don't want that to happen to you. And take a listen. Here we go. All right. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real life experiences of things where we've been there and done that in terms of finding better in our own lives. And perhaps some of the things that we've done great and some of the things that we haven't done so great, you can learn from and apply to your own life. Okay. So today, we are going to talk about retirement. Now, for some of you, it might seem a long, long way away, but there's a lot to learn. Even for those of you who are just starting out on your careers, this has to do with life. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot, and some of the things that I learned will most definitely apply to you. And so, if you know folks who are thinking about retiring or are in retirement and are kind of struggling with it, have them come. Let them know about this. Let them know about this because I'm going to answer some questions that I never, in my wildest dreams, expected would come up in my life. All right, so 2.5 years ago, in July of 2022, I retired. And I retired after 38 years of a professional career. I actually started working way back when I was a kid. But in terms of my professional career, which I started in 1984, I spent my whole career in high tech with companies like IBM and Sun Microsystems, and I ended my career with Expedia Group. And I'll tell you something. I was ready. I was totally ready for retirement. And by the way, what you're going to learn on this particular episode, are things you would never have thought of in terms of having your whole life planned out and thinking you have it all together, and all of a sudden finding that you don't know jack. And so, what this particular episode is about is a transition from your work life, which spans decades, to your what we call retirement. Now, I'll tell you that it's a big transition. As you may know, I believe we all have three careers in our life. Our first career is to learn and go to school. The second career is to earn a living for yourself and your family. And the third career is to return and give back, which hopefully is a very fulfilling and happy retirement. Okay. Now, if you may recall, when you transition from your first career to your second career, from your college work and your degree or your high school, and then you transitioned into your work life, it really did take you about 5 years. Just about everybody will agree with that, right? It was hard. For the first time in your life, you were making a lot of money, and you were learning about work and how to work hard and how to be successful. And that transition for a lot of us took about 5 years. Going to from your first career to your second career, going from your second career to your third career, from your learning or from your I'm sorry, from your earning years to your returning years, transitioning from your 30 or 40 years of working hard to your new career of giving back and enjoying your golden years. What I never, ever, 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 ever expected was that transition was going to take 5 years. Okay. And I can tell you this because everybody I've spoken to, without exception, has said that the transition from your work life into your retirement life, those who've done it successfully and transitioned and didn't die, took 5 years. And it's really weird because, you have it all together. You know what you're doing. You've made a living for 30 or 40 years. I mean, you know what's going on. You know how to be successful. You know how to make things happen. And man, you are ready to travel. You are ready to take vacations and rest and recharge. And a lot of people say, I'm gonna do this for 6 to 12 months. And then 6 to 12 months pass, and you know how fast that goes by, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, now what do I do? And that's the wall I hit. And that wall actually only took me 2.5 months to hit. And I was ready to go. I was going to finish that book. I was going to launch a podcast. I was going to do all these different things. And yet, 2.5 months into it, I just hit a wall. And that was me, a guy who had everything planned out. And somehow, some way, I was lost. I had no idea what to do. And so I started studying it. I started studying it, and I started to realize that there's a lot involved in moving from a place where you are the big man on campus. By the way, that's a boomer term, by the way. Sorry, but where you are you're kind of the shit, right? I didn't say a shit, the shit. Okay, so you're a big deal. For 30 or 40 years, you built up this reputation, you built up this identity. You had a very, very clear purpose. You had structure in your life. And then one day everybody says goodbye to you. Congratulations. Woohoo! Have a great retirement. You wake up the next morning, you go, okay, now what? Okay, let's go travel. Let's go do things. But all of a sudden, you find yourself with the only person paying attention to you is a person you live with. And and you are the boss of nobody. You 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 are you ain't the man anymore. You ain't the woman anymore. And it's really, really weird. And at some point in time, within the first 12 months, and usually faster, you come to that realization. And you come to the realization of, oh, so what do I do now? And you have the freedom. Man, you are retired and you are ready to go? Maybe not, right? So there's a lot, and I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned with you because it's really, really fascinating. And for those of you who are thinking about retiring, but you're not quite sure what you're going to do, there's a reason, and I'm going to explain to you the reasons why you're feeling that way, at least some of them. Okay? For those of you who have recently retired or are within 5 years of retiring and are trying to find your way and you just can't figure out what the heck is going on, I may answer some of your questions too. And for those of you who are a long way from retiring, this is something for you to know because there are people in your life who you know or you will know who are going to retire. They may be your parents, they may be your friends, they may be your work colleagues, but this is something where it's good to know. It's good to know. So you might be able to help them out and send them the link to this episode because this is really near and dear to my heart. And I had several people tell me, John, you have to do a podcast episode on your adventures in retirement. Now, let me tell you this. Okay, let me kind of tell you the history. Retirement is a very Western thing, right? And we all think about retirement as a really wonderful, it's kind of like the golden years. It's what we want. It's what we work hard for. But the vast majority of programs and coaching out there about retirement are all about money, are all about building your wealth. And the idea is we are so conditioned to think, yeah, I grow my wealth, I get this stuff going, I'm going to be great, right? It's going to be amazing. that we don't realize until we're in the middle of it that there is so much more to it than just money. Okay? Here's a few things I'm going to talk about. Loss of purpose. What's your purpose now? Is your purpose just to go out and play? Is your purpose to sleep? Is your purpose to party all the time? Right? What's your identity? Who are you? Who are you going to be? And and all of a sudden, you've lost your community. Who is your community now? You know, I was the biggest pain in the butt to my wife because I came home and she wanted me to leave. She's like, you know what? Can you find stuff? I had in my mind that my wife and I we were going to spend all of our time together, and we were going to have a great time and catch up on lost time and enjoy each other's company. She's got to want that too, or he's got to want that too. And I found out that she had a different vision for retirement. And one of the things that I found commonly happens, especially with men who come home after they retire, is that a lot of women tell them to leave the house and not to alphabetize the spices. Get out of the kitchen. And of course, for me, I'm like, wait, what? You don't want to spend time No, I don't. Go do something fun. Go play golf. Go fishing. Go paragliding. Do whatever you want to do. You're retired. Don't suck me into it. It's like, really? You know? And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. But anyway, retirement was created when the age of retirement was 65 because life expectancy wasn't much beyond that, right? And we've all heard the stories about people who have retired and within 5 years of retirement dying. Okay, Albert Einstein once says, Albert Einstein, he said this, I never liked the idea of retirement. It's a symbol of death to me, quote unquote, Albert Einstein. Okay, and so people would retire, and the stories are legendary. They would die within a year of their retirement, right? And so I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be one of those statistics. But here's what's happening right now. The average life expectancy in the United States is now 70, the late say, let's call it 80. Okay, 78, 79. Let's just round it up to 80. So we've gone from 65, 68 to now 80. And so if we retire when we're 65 and our average life expectancy is 80, we got 15 years to figure out what we're going to do with our lives, right? Now, here's the thing is that I want as many of those 15 years to be the best years of my life. And I think you do too, right? But here's the thing. If I have to take 5 years of those 15 years to figure things out, I am wasting a whole lot of amazing years where I have my health, I have time, and I have financial resources to enjoy my life, right? But it gets worse because the last 5 years are kind of the years that you're winding down, right? From the age 75 to 80. So what that says then is we have 10 years. We have 10 years of really wonderful life where we have everything. We have our health. Like I said, we have our health, we have time, and we have money. Now, if we're spending 5 years of that 10 years trying to figure things out, we just wasted half of the best years of our lives, right? I want everybody to not do that. Take 1 month. Take 1 month to figure it all out. And so that's one of the things I want to talk about. Well, that is the thing I want to talk about. And I'm going to talk more about this, a lot more about this because as we're growing up, and before we go to work, we all have lots of time. We all have our health, but we don't have money. And then we enter our working years. And arguably, but not so arguably, we have our health. We're now making money, but we don't have time to enjoy it, right? And then typically what happens is that we then go into retirement where we have our money, we have our health, but we don't have that much time. Well, for me, I want those years where you have time, you have money, and you have your health to be the best years ever. And that's a really relatively short window because it's in the latter part of our lives. So if I can knock out nine of 4.5 of the 5 years of figuring it out, I think I'd be doing good for folks who are in that space. Okay, so let's talk about the first and probably the most important thing that I learned. I lost my purpose. Now, here's the thing. I gave myself new purpose, and my new purpose was finishing that book, launching my podcast, and moving on, right? But even then, knowing what my purpose was in terms of giving back, and you've heard me say this before, I believe we all share a common purpose in making the world better than the day we landed on it. And so my purpose, I was all over it, right? I was all over it. But the reason why I hit a wall in just over 2 months was because I didn't realize the idea of losing my identity. And I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to mentally shift my identity from what I'd built it to be over 38 years to this new thing of being an author and a podcast host. Are you kidding me? Because over the last 30 years, I was successful. I had a great career. I'd helped a lot of people, and I had a sales career for my entire time. And I had a great time. I had fun. But now all of a sudden I'm trying to go out into the world and say that I'm an author. Who the heck am I to say I'm an author? And I'm going to go out into the world and tell people I'm a podcast host. Are you kidding me? You're a podcast host, especially to the people I knew, to the people who knew me and my community. They're like, okay, um, really? What happened to your retirement? And you're really an author? Now, everybody's encouraging. I get that. And it's wonderful because when you have friends that are encouraging and are cheering you on, it really helps, right? But at the same time, I'm not an author. I'm not a podcast host. Those are the words that are going in my head. I don't even know if anybody's going to read my book. I don't know if anybody's going to listen to my podcast. And so now all of a sudden, the loss of identity becomes a real problem. Even though I had a purpose, two purposes, several purposes, my big purpose being to make the world better, I knew all this. I didn't have the identity, and without the identity, I didn't have the self-confidence of doing what I think I want to do to make the world better. And that's a real problem because you have to build it up. You have to build it, right? And that part of it does take time. But understanding that that is going to be a challenge that comes into your life is a huge, huge benefit, right? Because you can be aware of it. If you're not aware of it, you're going to be floundering like I was, going, what the heck is going on? And of course, then the issue becomes, okay, how do I develop this, right? And how do I move forward? And these are the things that we're going to talk about. But along with that, right, as I mentioned to you, with regards to your work colleagues and so forth, is a loss of community. And in some cases, if you're not careful, you have the social networks and all these things, but it becomes social isolation. And, a lot of people will find themselves in that trap where they'll kind of close in upon themselves and they'll go, I don't know what's going on, right? When in fact, you need to get out there. You need to meet if and even people I know who retired along with their best friends at the same time, thinking they're going to, we're gonna have a great rest of our lives together. Have you tried to hang out with the same people every day, day in and day out for a long time? Um, some people can make it work. A lot of people can't. But anyway, so it becomes this thing of isolation and lack of worth, lack of self-esteem, because all of a sudden now your only audience is your family. And next point, your family relationships change. I told you about my wife. But we want to retire. We want to retire and spend time with the kids and grandkids. You know what? Your kids and grandkids have their own lives, and you may be part of it, but they have their own lives. And you got to let them live their lives. And I mean, I was excited because now I could spend time with my grandkids, and now I could spend time with my kids, and it didn't quite work out that way. They love me dearly, and I love them. But you got to give them space, especially when they're all grown up, especially when they have careers, especially when they're busy. It's a cats in the cradle song again, right? My boy, it was just like me. And so, you know, it's one of those things where when you're not careful and you're not aware of the impact that you're going to have on your family relationships, it can cause stress. It can cause stress everywhere, not only for you finding your way, but for your family because they love you and they want you to be part of their lives, but in the right way for them. Okay? So, for example, one of the things that I've learned to do is I'll just text and say, "Hey, what's going on?" "Oh, nothing much. Everything's great." Okay, that means we got our own stuff going. But if they answer me with, "Hey, you want to come over tonight?" I go, "Yes, ma'am, I will be there." And so you got to give them space because you now have all this time, you now have all this money, you have your health, but your kids don't have time because they're in their earning years and they're making a run, a major run to be successful in their careers. So these are just a few of the things that I thought I'd share with you. And I'm going to share with you, I shared with you five today. I talked about purpose. I talked about identity. I talked about isolation, right? I talked about impact on relationships. And the last thing I'll talk about is, all of that stuff can lead up to mental illness, things that happen that you have no idea are going on. And when you slow down, right? You isolate. That leads to loneliness. That leads to a feeling of invisibility. That leads to depression. It can lead to a decline in cognitive stimulation, which leads to things like dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that. So, my whole thing with this podcast episode is to make you aware that happens. It really happens. But there's things you can do about it. and I gave you some ideas, right? And I'm going to be spending a lot of time on this because you know what? If folks are out there wasting all those years of figuring things out, right? Instead of taking those 4.5 years and making the world better, making the world better, making your world better. A better you lifts the world. You've heard me say that 1,000 times. So if I can help folks skip those 5 years of that terribly painful, hellacious transition, it really is. It's really painful. When you start to question your worth, when you start to question your identity, when you start to question your purpose, that's a big deal. When you start doubting yourself, when you start thinking that maybe I'm not worth what I used to be, when in fact you're worth more than you've ever been worth because you represent the demographic of people who have the greatest pool of knowledge and experience and wisdom on planet Earth, if we can't, if there's a way where I can mobilize that and I can help that, man, what a difference that would make to the world, don't you think? So, this is why I'm going to be spending a lot of time on it because self-esteem is huge. Taking care of yourself is huge. Um, you know, recognizing burnout. And, in the corporate world, PTSD is a real thing. I'm going to introduce you to people who retired because they were burnt out. It was, and they psychologically didn't have the cycles to handle it anymore. And so the goal here is to make your life better, you know, to take those golden years of your life. And you know what? I'm changing. I want to change. I'm on a mission to change the word retirement. When you think of retirement, what do you think? I mean, is the word retirement a happy word? We interpret it as a happy word, but I don't want to be a re. I'm not tired, and so I don't want to be a retirement. And retirement is for the last 5 years of your life or the last 2 years of your life when you just when every the best thing the most you can look forward to and the best thing you can look forward to is looking back on your memories, right? That's what retirement is. There is a phase between your work life and your retirement that I call phase three. And and it's those 10 to 15 years that can be our absolutely most productive years of our lives in giving back and making the world better that I want to help people do. So please share this, okay? Because and especially if you know people who are kind of struggling right now, who are going, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I thought my retirement was going to be a lot more than this. Send them this link. Please share this with them. And I'm going to talk a lot about this topic because and you know what? The idea of purpose, identity, self-esteem, mental illness, relationships, those are topics, those are things in life that apply to every single one of us, right? And that's why I say that we can all learn from this. And I have learned so much. And when I learned all this, I am my 5 years. I'm not there. I'm not there. I figured this out, and instead of going through my 5 years, I cut off 3.5 years of that process, and I'm retired. And so I'm all about sharing this. So with that, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. I hope I gave you some ideas. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for joining me. Please subscribe and share. All right, until next time. We'll see ya. Bye.